everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight on Friday Night AV. I am Scott Newby from Living It with Scott and Kat podcast. I have the beautiful Catherine right next to me. She will be arming the comments this evening. For everybody listening to this on Spotify or watching this on YouTube, I certainly appreciate you guys spending your Friday night with us. Jack Vaughn, what's up, brother, man? Thanks for joining us. Appreciate the support like always. This is episode 15, January 26th. I released a video earlier today. We actually got our very first super chat. So, John, I certainly appreciate that, brother. I don't know how a lot of this works, but they sent me something that we got a super chat from me. So that was awesome, man. Thank you, sir. To all of our subscribers and Patreon members, you guys certainly make this worthwhile. You guys sharing our videos and giving us thumbs up certainly puts a smile on our face, and we enjoy doing this and just hanging out with everybody. I got a special guest this evening, which is exciting. Been trying to drop some fresh content with you guys. I got some going to be working on some reaction videos and impression videos this weekend that hopefully I can share with you guys soon. Got some fresh meat coming by. Going to put them through the paces, and then we'll get their thoughts on what they think. I think it's going to be a good time. For everybody that's been reaching out to us about Bass Brings Us Together, Kat and I's annual event, we are booked. We are completely full. We filled up last week. So unfortunately, if you wanted to come and haven't reached out to us yet or got a verification from us, unfortunately, we have reached our 60 people max. So certainly appreciate everybody that's driving and flying in and coming to hang out with us for that. I also wanted to say, so tonight, as everybody knows, this is a very community-driven channel. We get questions, we get comments, and we try to provide back to the community what you guys are asking for. And we've been very lucky with that so far. People want to talk about subwoofers. We were lucky to get Mark Seaton on. People want to talk about calibration. We were able to get Brandon on. People want to talk about amplifiers. We got Dylan from Buckeye Amps. We've got Tony from JTR. We've got Youthman on the channel. We've gotten Don Dunn talking to integrators. So we brought Don Dunn on. Acoustics, we were able to bring Matthew Pose on. So all of those are our previous episodes. I've had you guys asking about projectors. I haven't had any luck with JVC or Epson yet, but still working on it. Certainly we'll work on it. But a question that we get asked fairly often, and it would only be probably because they're two of the biggest speaker brands out there, is people ask me a lot of questions about SVS and Klipsch. I've owned products from both companies. I now only respond or talk about the products that I've owned or personally used. Like my dad just got 4 of the brand new Klipsch RP 1600s. I'm a big fan of those. I used to own the PB 16s and PB 2000s. So I mean, I can talk about like stuff like that, but I don't have the information enough to like compare anything or like customer feedback or, certain issues or why something may be better than something else. So when people were asking me questions, I thought in my head, who's a good person that, that I could not only trust to bring on here, but that, is for the community as well. So our special guest tonight is Stephen Dew from Paducah Home Theater. He's very familiar in a lot of the groups, and he is actually participating in MWAVE this year. His house, he's got a lot of cool gear throughout his whole house, actually. But he's one of the premium experiences that some people are going to see or that you can see. And then I also believe that he is, we'll probably see him walking around MWAVE, I'm pretty sure, too. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with him at MWAVE, and I will, I think this is going to be I don't like when I say fun, but I think this is going to be a fun episode, guys. I had like 15 questions come in, and some of them were really strange that we won't bring up. I don't know if they were just kind of joking, but I got like a good 8 or 9 solid questions that I think people really wanted some answers to. So without further ado, let's welcome Stephen to the program. And Stephen, what is up, brother?
What's going on, guys?
Hey, first of all, I got to say thanks. I appreciate you taking a Friday night to hang out with me and the audio and video community.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So for everybody that don't know, who is Stephen Do? I mean, outside of the home, I mean, a lot of people do know you from the home theater scene, but you know, who else is Stephen?
So been into audio for a long time. I'm getting pretty close to 40 years old, so still kind of a young buck. I like to feel anyways. But I've been around this stuff since I was about 13 or 14 years old when I got my first home theater from Circuit City way back in the day. Kind of took a break on it for a while I was in the military. No room for home theater stuff in an aircraft carrier or anything like that. And then once I got out and was making a good paycheck, I decided to get back into it. Over the years, I've developed a lot of good relationships with people. Corey, that owns Paducah Home Theater, he's a guy I met on the Klipsch forum. Wasn't too fond of at first. He was kind of a stranger, you know, in a group of close people. Ended up him and I chit chatting about stuff. I was actually his first customer when he became a Klipsch dealer. Fast forward to 2019, and started working with him part time. I've never been full time with him, just part time, and that kind of leads me to where we are today. We represent a whole lot of brands with Paducah Home Theater. We got access to a whole lot of gear, but Klipsch and SVS is, you know, what we're talking about tonight's two of the main that we're pushing.
You and for the people that aren't aware, I mean, your house, I mean, I've seen pictures a lot of you. It's like you got multiple complete setups in your home for music and movies, correct?
I do. I don't have at the current time, I don't have a dedicated music, and I say music 2.1, kind of like how you have, you know, in your living room. I like a variety of stuff. I'm not a fanboy of anything in particular. I've had a ton of different stuff over the last 10 years since I've been out of the military. And currently, I mean, I'm ranging from behind me in my bar here. I have a DIY 5.0 setup that I built back in 2016. And I had a couple SVS subwoofers. I recently switched those over to the new Klipsch. My theater room is actually a full Klipsch heritage front stage, as well as the pro audio in-wall and in-ceiling stuff. I have Seaton subwoofers, which I heard you mention, Mark, just a little bit ago. I needed a very specific size of subwoofer, and his fit the bill. And then about 2 years ago, when Perlisten hit the ground running, I bought a Perlisten front stage, and I have that up in my living room. So I got a pretty good range of stuff here in the house to listen to, which is one of the reasons that I volunteered to do the MWAVE deal. So people could just come and experience, you know, from DIY up to, you know, the 5 speakers I have in the front of my living room retail for $50,000.
Yeah, those people are in for quite a treat. No
Yeah,
doubt.
I'm excited to provide some variety. I know there's a lot of good theaters around Kansas City. We got a really good group of people around here. I don't think anybody has quite the amount of setups that I do that just give a good variety of what's available out there.
Now, are people going to see you at actual MWAVE too, like the actual event?
Yes, for sure. So the home theater VIP experiences, I think, is what Youth Man's calling them. They're basically on Thursday. The event is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there's 3 time slots available. I want to say like noon, 3, and 6 o'clock ish, and they're $200 per seat to come. People could see obviously up to 3 rooms. I think mine's about half booked. My evening one is booked. I think just with people flying in, noon is kind of early for people getting there just for the weekend. I think I only have maybe one seat sold at noon. So that guy's going to, if he's by himself here, he's going to get the ultimate VIP. It'll just be him and me for 3 hours. But yeah, after the event's over Thursday, I'll be off work Friday, and I'll be at the event all weekend. Sunday's kind of, it depends on, you know, if I see everything by the Saturday evening and I'm done, then I may not go Sunday. I didn't last year. I didn't go Sunday morning.
Well, I'm sure me and Kat will be down there, so I'm sure we'll run into you, and I'm sure we'll end up hanging out. So that'll be a good time. I had a blast last year, and I think they're going to have a amazing turnout this year as well too. I see a lot of people are pumped up.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's very casual. I mean, I've never been to Axpona or any of those, the higher end stuff that they always hold in hotels. But I've heard people talk about them and just I call it like the snooty 2-channel crowd, you know, if you want to call it that, the really high end stuff, you know, come in the room, shh, be quiet, don't talk. You know, this MWAVE is not like that. It's not what Youthman and Ryan are shooting for. They're shooting for an experience. And I think they're really doing a good job so far.
Yeah. I went to Expona a couple times, and all those little rooms suck. I could care less about listening to $100,000 turntable on $100,000 set of speakers. The only cool thing is like JTR and Seton and even Emotiva had these huge theater rooms. That was the only places I was really gave a crap about checking out. So
yeah.
Now Amway is just pretty much just a bunch of rooms that are cool like that. So
well, and I think one of the things Youthman was gearing towards was home theater more than 2-channel.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll tell anybody, like, I listen to music pretty much from when I wake up to when I go to bed. Like, I'm just listening to it all the time, but very rarely am I sitting in a chair, equilateral triangle, you know, perfect listening environment. It just doesn't happen very often. It's not realistic, not at my age. And now I hope maybe when I'm 55 or 16, I don't have kids running around the house. You know, I would love to sit in a $10,000 Eames chair and have a really nice 2-channel setup. I would love that. I do love music. I can't sit and listen to it like that. Home theater is much, much more my style. And that's why the event is so appealing to me.
Yeah, and we feel the same way. We're a very music driven household, and that's the good thing about like the system we got upstairs is because everybody's just walking around and making dinner or straightening up the house or going through the mail or, you know, just doing whatever. Every once in a great while, I actually get to sit down and try to do some critical listening, but most of the time it's nothing like that.
Yeah. I like that your setup's big enough that you can turn it up and everybody on the block's going to be able to hear it.
Well, I crank it up if I go mow the lawn so I can listen to some Metallica while I'm out there pushing the mower.
See, I take the opposite route. I have a backyard speaker set up. I have a front yard speaker set up. I have a garage speaker set up.
Yeah, Bluetooth speaker hanging off the mower.
Yeah, I got them everywhere, man.
Okay. Well, I know there are people here that are waiting to get their questions answered. And it's funny because I was in my mind, I've known some Klipsch guys. I know some SVS guys. And you're actually the perfect guy to talk to because I know that you sell them both. You've dealt with them both. You've definitely owned both, demoed both. And, you know, might not have the exact scientific explanation that people are looking for here, but we can actually give some real world answers that just aren't, because when people ask me the questions, if I haven't personally experienced it, I don't want to be like, well, that should sound good. You know, shit, I don't know. I don't want to just lie to somebody.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
I
think you and I talked about that before. I try to always, I call it like the used car salesman. I try to never be that guy when I'm a sales guy. If somebody like we recently picked up Kef. Okay. I've heard some Kef like 15 years ago, but if somebody asked me, hey, what's the new R11 Meta sound like? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't heard it yet. I can read you some specs, but until I get one and I can listen to it next to my Per Listen or next to some Cornwalls or something, I can't give you any. I don't know. I really don't. And I try to be straightforward with people because the last thing I want is to, you know, somebody to get it and they're like, hey, these suck. This is not what you said at all.
Yeah, it ain't worth ruining your reputation over one sale.
100%. Yeah, I'm not that kind of. That's why, you know, this is always just it's a side thing for me. I love dealing with people. You asked about who is Steven. I've been selling speakers since I had a driver's license. I used to sit at McDonald's on the weekends and sell subwoofers out of the back of my mom's minivan. Like, I've been selling speakers for a long time. And one thing that I realized over the years, not just speakers, like I like helping people spend their money and I like helping them spend it wisely. I've recently, the last couple of years, got into cycling pretty heavily. And I have a lot of friends that have got into it with me. And I love when somebody calls me and says, hey, Steven, I got, you know, $700 to spend, or, hey, I got $3,000 to spend. What kind of bike should I be looking for? Because I sit around and research the stuff so much. I like, you know, providing the info and saying, hey, if you're just going to ride once a month, you don't need a $3,000 bike. You just don't. You could get away with something a lot cheaper and still have just as much fun as I do, even though I ride, a $5,000 or $6,000 bike. But I ride a lot. So to me, it makes sense to have a bike that nice.
Yeah, I was always wondering what kind of electric bike I should buy. Oh, we're talking about different. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I see your posts all the time, man. You're doing miles and miles and miles. You even got your family involved with it. It seems like now.
I just bought my wife an electric assist bike so she could ride and hang with as many miles as we do, and it's pretty hilly around where I live. I actually just recently in November I had set a goal in 22 and I didn't hit it, but I wanted to ride my first Century, which is a 100-mile ride. And on November 10th, day before Veterans Day, I took off to Rochester, Missouri, which is down along the river. The Katy Trail actually goes from Kansas City to St. Louis. It's like 250 or 280 miles or something. And I rode 100 miles on it. And I was pretty proud of myself. It was something that I hadn't really trained for. About 62 or 63 miles was the furthest I had ever ridden. And that about killed me. But I had it as a goal, and I went and threw a backpack on and got dressed because it was like 32 degrees that morning. And I just started riding, and it took me 8.5 hours to do it, but I did it. I didn't die.
Yeah, that's a heck of an accomplishment. Jesus. Yeah. Cat gets tired after a 60-mile ride in a car.
Right?
That's true.
All right. Well, actually, the first question I was going to ask you already answered before we got on here, is that I've had 3 people bring up during a couple of broadcasts if I had any idea or any info when new SVSs are dropping. That is no information for anybody really right now.
Yeah. I mean, we stay somewhat in touch with the SVS guys, but they're pretty big. I mean, they want to sell new products. So as soon as they have it and it's available to purchase, or, hey, it's going to be available in a month, they're going to push it out to all the dealers. So they can start getting POs and stuff in. And I haven't seen nothing about it yet. So just recently when Youthman shared, that was the first I've even heard of that stuff. It all looks pretty intriguing. I hope to get at least a pair of the towers to try out. I'm hoping Youthman, I don't think he's confirmed yet on whether or not SVS is going to be at MWAVE. They were last year.
Yeah.
Their room was a pretty big hit, even with some of the guys around here that are more technical and, into some higher end gear. I heard a lot of them come out of the SVS room. They're like, man, them guys got that room dialed in. It sounds good.
Yeah. I think the advantage those guys have is they do so much of it. They just know what works. Cause I mean, they literally travel all over the world just showing off that system.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they have a crew that's their job.
Yeah.
To do shows and big, like you talked about ABT and stuff like that, where they go and say, hey, we're just going to show off some new speakers. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't show at ABT new stuff. I'm pretty sure they probably will at Nebraska Furniture Mart here, local. But yeah, I'm sure it's the same team that travels around, and they just rinse and repeat that stuff. So they're real good at it.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a wife and a kid, that's probably a pretty awesome job to have.
Oh yeah. I'd do it in a heartbeat. If I didn't have a wife.
Get paid to travel around and play with stereo stuff all day.
Yep. Chit chat audio with friends.
Yeah. Can't say that'd be my dream.
Yeah.
All right. So without further ado, we will hop into some of these questions. I appreciate everybody in the chat. If you are getting a response back, you're certainly getting it back from Kat. I appreciate her always giving me a hand when she would rather be, upstairs writing in her journal or whatever you do up there. All right. So here we go, Stephen. Can you please explain in layman's term the biggest difference that I would notice moving up in the Klipsch tower models? I don't want to overspin, but I certainly don't want to cut myself short.
Okay. Biggest thing I think you're going to get moving up, build quality comes to mind when I think about from the reference series, which is, and Klipsch did a good job on this. So basically, 10 years ago, you had Synergy and Icon, which was available at Best Buy. They were silver cone. They were the lower line. They rebranded that to Reference, gave everything copper woofers, they sell a lot more of it. It's a smart move. As a dealer, it makes it tough because a lot of people are like, hey, I want reference, and what they really want is reference premier. So there is a difference between the two. The main difference between the two of those lines is going to be the titanium tweeters on the reference premier. They're just a lot smoother at high volumes. And I mean, to be honest, most people I know that are buying Klipsch are buying them because they're efficient and they play loud. So most people are cranking them. And I just tell people, I'm like, hey, if you're going to buy these and turn them to 11 all the time, the aluminum tweeters in the reference series, just, they can get a little fatiguing, in my opinion. And obviously everybody here is a little different. So the RP series are made, they are overseas, they're wrapped in vinyl. So once you move past that to like the Heritage line, you move to down in Hope, Arkansas. They got a facility down there where they build all the Heritage, the THX Ultra 2 line, as well as the Pro Cinema line. So the Heritage is when you're going to move to three-way stuff. No matter what model you're buying, you're getting the three-way period. So what I tell people is the Heritage is more of it's a more accurate speaker. It has a pronounced mid-range. A lot of people say it's, kind of a warmer sounding speaker. I don't know that I would agree with that term, that it's warmer. It just has more mid-range. It's just different sounding, right? And of course, when you get up in the higher Heritage stuff, you get up into the fully horn loaded when you go to the La Scala, the K horn, and now the newer Jubilees. When you get into those, I mean, they're monsters. You got to have big rooms for those, especially the Jubilees. I don't know if you've ever got to see or hear a pair of the new Jubilees.
Yeah. I don't know. I seen a pair like 2 years ago. ABT actually had a pair on display.
Yeah. So they're probably not. I haven't seen your speakers that you have in person, the big RTJs. I'm sure they're not as tall as those. They're like 4 feet wide or something like that. You got to have a big room for them.
Yeah.
One of the things that they improved on them is they closed the backs on them, so you don't have to have them in dedicated corners. And the K horns are the same way. Before, you always had to have perfect corners, or the things just didn't work. And once you go past the Heritage, you get into the THX Ultra 2 line. And I don't know that I'd really say past is maybe not the right word for it. It's kind of just a different Heritage, going to be geared more towards music listening. Like the Heritage line does not have a dedicated center channel. Me and Corey have been begging Klipsch for one for a long time. They just don't have it. The THX Ultra 2 line, I've actually had a few of the full 7.2 setups over the years. I bought my first one back in like 2013. I bought it on the used market from a guy in Canada. It was always a system that I think it retailed for like 12 or 13 grand. And I was like, man, if I ever get a chance to buy that, or if I win the lottery, I'm going to buy it. And I got on Craigslist one day, I think, and this guy was selling one in Canada for like 3 grand. So I bought it. And at the time I had the flagship reference. They were the RF 63s. I had those for a number of years. I loved them. They were one of my favorite Klipsch speakers I've ever owned. But I got the THX stuff, and I realized that they're a really flat, neutral speaker. There's a reason integrators don't mind working with them. They measure really well. They're a really cohesive system. Like the surrounds that go with them, the in ceilings, the in walls, everything is really cohesive with that. So I always tell people, like, if you want a real, cinema quality, very cohesive system. And I like using that word because to me, cohesive, like people talk about front ends being timber matched and whatnot. If a system is cohesive, like you watch the movie and you just get lost in it. You quit thinking about, oh, my speakers and, oh, this sound's coming from there. Like you're just in the movie paying attention to it. And that's really what we all want, right?
Yeah. I had the THX Ultras for 10 years.
You had them. They're great speakers.
The only thing I didn't like, the only reason why I ever sold them is I couldn't get the output that I sometimes wanted, and I kept blowing drivers on them.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
You heard something that would play substantially louder. I owned the Klipsch THX Ultras. Jonathan Von Engel brought over his JTR Noesis 228s, I believe.
That's what I have now.
Or no. Sorry, not the 228s. I think he had 888s when they was just when there was no horn. It was just 3 8-inch drivers, and the middle one had a coaxial driver in it. He brought those over, and we just set them up in my living room on bar stools. Put the center vertically in front of my TV, and we played Art of Flight. And he turned it up over reference, and I was just like, holy crap! My stuff will not play this loud, just won't. And so I know 100% what you're talking about there. And really, to me, physics comes into it. You got dual 6.5-inch woofers. The cabinet's not super humongous. And if you took the tweeter out on that, it's not a very big. It's a 1-inch, tweeter on it. But it ain't nothing that's 4 inches and 2 inches deep like what's on the RF7s. It's much smaller, so the output's just not going to be there. Now, if you can go, I'll say above on this one, THX. You could go to the pro cinema level, which Klipsch doesn't. It's not a residential speaker. It's for a movie theater. I stumbled upon a guy out in Emporia, Kansas, back in 2014 or 15, and he was selling a set of, they were KPT 904s. And I had seen KPT letters talked about on the Klipsch community, forever ago. And people would talk about them. And I'm like, what the hell are these guys talking about? And I would look, I'd Google them, and I'm like, God, what are these ugly, ginormous? And then I bought some. And boy, I couldn't sell the THX Ultras fast enough to recoup the money on it. The Pro Series, depending on what model you get into. So the 904s that I had were a dual 15-inch bass bin. And then they have a 510 horn, which is, a pretty sizable high frequency horn. It's like 16 inches wide, 10 inches tall. It's big. And then it's got a 3-inch compression driver on it. And it's, it was made, I think it was spec'd for, like, if I remember right, when I looked it up, basically the old Klipsch cinema brochures were like good, better, best systems. And I want to say that was good for like a 225 seat theater. And then it was better for a 200 and best in a 175. And I had it in a room that was like 12 by 19. So, I mean, you could play them things as loud as, basically you could turn them up until my circuit breakers would blow, and it wouldn't hurt nothing.
Yeah, you give up before they do. That's just
100%. And I mean, and the only thing that's hard about the KPT, the Pro model stuff, is that it's ugly. It's all made to be behind a screen.
Yeah. So
the good thing about it is, for people that are doing acoustically transparent screens, you can get into a pretty high-end theater and not spend a ton of money because you're not paying for a super pretty cabinet. Yeah. So depending on how people want to go, I mean, probably since I've been working with Corey, 2019, I've probably sold like 3 front ends that are Pro Audio front ends, and I've sold a fair amount of the Pro Audio surrounds, and we can talk about those a little bit later on one of the other questions.
Okay.
But yeah, to go back, what you talked about, like build quality gets nicer as you go up. Of course, made in the U.S., real wood veneer when you get up to the Heritage stuff. You get a longer warranty. You get a 10-year warranty on the Heritage, which, as much as even people that say, I don't care about warranty, like, man, when you buy something in the back of your head, hey, I could throw a party at 9 years and 11 months and you blow a driver, then you just call Klipsch and they're just going to send you a new one. And Klipsch is really good. I read it all the time, and I'm sure you have. I can't tell you how many times I've read of people calling Klipsch 2 years after their warranty was up. And if, providing somebody a $15 or $20 tweeter to keep a customer happy, they do it all the time, man. And when I see people say, Klipsch has terrible customer service, it's like, what are you talking about, man? Like, they take care of people. They do.
Yeah, they helped me out a few times when I blew some tweeters. They sent them out, no question. They didn't even want the old ones back.
Nope. Yeah, I have drivers sitting here on top of my beer fridge. I have a handful of drivers in there that I've blown, but something where I bought a brand new speaker and it showed up and had voice coil rub or something.
So our next question is, I should have wrote the names, because last time I wrote the names and people were like, "Oh, thanks for giving me a shout out." But I'm planning on buying a Denon or Marantz receiver around $1,500, and want to do a 7-channel setup. So I don't know if he's doing a 5.2 or just 7 bed layer, but anyway, he says he don't want to spend no money, or he don't have the room or whatever. He don't want no external amplifiers. He's curious on what he feels, what we feel would be a better fit, Klipsch or SVS, strictly just doing receivers, not interested in any extra power.
Right. So kind of when I was thinking about how to answer that one earlier, first thing I did was I hopped on both their websites and looked at, excuse me, hang on just a second.
Straight vodka?
Straight vodka. Little ice. But I hopped on both their websites just to kind of see what fell within that price range. Basically landed on the Denon 3800. It's actually a little over. It retails for $1,700, and then the Marantz Cinema 60 retails for the same. So, you know, in that range, and those are retail prices. Street prices, you usually can get a little bit better deal on them, you know, if you contact the dealer. So I always tell people between Marantz and Denon, I always kind of compare it to like Honda and Acura, right? They're both good cars. One's a little fancier, you know, Toyota, Lexus, what have you. The Marantz, you're always going to pay a premium price, you know, for the name. I've never, you know, comparing two models side by side, I've never got to like quick switch like what they did at MWAVE last year. And that's really how you should be doing an A and B comparison. But side by side, I've never really been able to tell a difference in the sound between a Denon and Marantz. A lot of people say the Marantz is a warmer sound. And I mean, when I say a lot, almost everyone that has them says that they're a little more musical, a little warmer sounding. Two of my setups are ran by Denon. One of them is ran by Marantz. And to be honest, if Denon had a really nice pre-pro, my home theater would be ran by Denon as well. I just like Denon's always a little more bang for your buck. So for this gentleman asking this question, a Denon 3800 is a 9.4 versus a Cinema 60 is a 7.2, right? So there's a big difference right there. I try to sell somebody the Denon all day over the Marantz, unless they were, you know, just diehard Marantz customer. Hey, I've had Marantz my whole life. I've had good luck with them. That's what I want. I'll sell you a Cinema 60.
Do you sell Denon and Marantz, Stephen? Do you sell Denon and Marantz? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. I knew you sell Klipsch and SVS. I didn't know you did Denon and Marantz as well.
Yeah, we have access to a lot of stuff. Denon, Marantz, Yamaha, NAD. I mean, that's just to name some of the few of the receivers that we sell. I do have a NAD. I have a gym right here on the other side of me where I have an indoor training cycle training. And it's ran by a NAD AVR because I wanted to try out Dirac and see what it was all about.
Okay, so for any of you guys that are watching, if you got questions about possibly, you know, if you're looking at a receiver, speakers, or anything, or if you have questions about something that we're not talking about, you can shoot Stephen an email. Here's his email address. I actually didn't know. I knew he sold quite a few products, and it certainly fit the bill for tonight for SVS and Klipsch, but that's cool to know that he sells Denon and Marantz as well. So any questions that we're not answering for you guys tonight, you can just shoot him a message. He'll get back to you.
Let's see here. What's Jack's got Denon and Klipsch?
Oh, sorry. Oh,
yeah. You're right, Jack. Basically, I mean, that's not just Denon. That's all AVRs. As you start adding more channels, the power is going to go down. That's where people that are into the high output, you're going to add an amplifier. But for guys, you know, that's asking this question, and he's just, some people like to keep things simple, or maybe, you know, his TV stand's only got room for one thing. I mean, we all make compromises, right? I mean, you'd have 50 subwoofers if you had a bigger room, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it, man.
So, so basically, you know, what I was saying is the Denon for a guy that's on a budget, I'm going to try to talk him into the Denon all day over it. Marantz, just because you're getting a little more bang for the buck. And as far as going SVS or Klipsch, you know, everybody hears differently. The SVS is definitely, it's a different sound. And I think a big part of that's due to the tweeter not being in a horn. It sprays sound a lot more than a horn is much more directive. So it's not so important to have room treatment and whatnot, depending on, you know, where you're setting and what your room's set up like. And the SVS, all of them that I've ever heard, they have more mid-range. You know, they're going to be, I won't say like the Heritage speakers, but they have more of a pronounced mid-range than the more common reference and RP series that Klipsch is putting out. So if you know, if you're a mid-range person, I'd tell you SVS is going to win in that category every time.
Is that true with both the Prime and the Ultra?
On the mid-range?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them being three ways, especially the primes. I've heard the SVS Ultra Towers in a couple different places. It's either always been in a store or at something like MWAVE. The primes I ordered as soon as they came out because they fit a really good budget. You know, that there's a lot of people that are in this hobby, but not all of them have huge budgets.
Yeah.
So as soon as the primes came out, I ordered a set at my old house that I lived at. And the prime towers and the prime center, man, they're a really good bang for your buck speaker. The only thing I ran into with those, at the time I had a Denon X2100, so just kind of a mid-level AVR, no pre-outs. So I was just on AVR power only. And on AVR power only, they could never get loud enough to really satisfy my wants. I always, when I was selling them, I would tell people, I'm like, man, if these were going in like a bedroom or something all day. And for the people that aren't trying to, you know, hit reference, not that I do it very often, but if somebody comes over and wants me to show off, I want to be able to. And when your system limits that, I got to start looking elsewhere. You know, how can I power these differently, or do I just need more efficient speakers because I can't afford, you know, a big high powered amp? So the sensitivity, the extra sensitivity that Klipsch has always been appreciated by me with not having a huge budget all the time. And something I jotted down that I looked up the Ultra Center channel just for kind of an example. The Ultra Center is listed at 87 dB sensitivity. And the similar priced 504C is listed at 96, which, and a lot of people will say that Klipsch rates there's a little high. Even if you bumped off 4 dB, you're still at 92 versus 87. That's a big difference. I mean, you got to put 4 times the power to the 87 dB to get the same output from the Klipsch.
And so if we're only doing it off receiver power,
if you're a guy, and you know, and like Jack mentioned in the comments, if you start running, hey, I'm buying a 7-channel receiver and I'm running all 7 speakers. When you have lower sensitivity speakers and you say, hey, my room is 20 by 28 and I want to listen at, you know, 5 under reference, it ain't happening, man. It's just not going to happen.
And nobody likes distortion.
Your receiver might go to -5, but it ain't actually going to be there. It's out of gas.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good answer. And that's a good thing to point out too, is the sensitivity is definitely going to play a huge role if you're not interested in getting the extra power. But you know, a good power amp can cost just as much as the budget receiver they want to buy or more. So I could definitely see, you know.
Yeah, I always tell people my preference. Rather than buying a real high-end AVR, I'd rather sell one that processes the amount of channels that they want to have eventually, and then an amp to go with it down the road. But I don't think it's the most important thing. Like if somebody's like, well, hey, should I buy a Klipsch 504C and an amp, or should I buy an RC64 and no amp? I'm going to tell them an RC64 is the better buy. It's going to last a lot longer. It's going to hold its value a lot better. It's a better speaker. And then maybe 6 or 7 years down the road, you add an amp. Yeah. You know, like people that want to buy speaker cables. Speaker cables is the last thing you should add to your setup. You know, if you got a $50,000 set of speakers, yeah, I don't know that you should have a $20 set of speaker cables. I don't say you should have $1,000 set of cables, but you could spend a couple $100 on something that at least looks nice. If it's laying on your floor, it's not going to hurt anything. So
what about the coat hangers?
Yeah. You know what? Buy some fancy ass coat hangers.
I tried that at the house, but it don't work good with plastic coat hangers. So don't try that.
Right. Yeah. Just nothing, huh?
Just the ground floor, the noise floor was super low with them, at least.
I bet.
That's awesome. Yeah, you know, it's funny because people give me stuff about like the RTJs. They're like, oh, you spent that much money, but you use the mono price cable. I'm like, yeah, if I was to buy expensive wire, it'd just be to show the wire off. But I don't want to get a bunch of daggers thrown at us and we'll be burned on the barbecue tonight by talking about wires.
Use whatever wires you want and be happy. Who cares?
So this brings us to question number 3. And actually, I see this question asked pretty often actually on the SVS forums. If I get an SVS sub with the app, does that mean that I do not need to do the mini DSP?
Well, let's answer that really easily. No, you don't need to do a mini DSP. I mean, you don't even have to play with the app. You don't need to. It's only going to be beneficial if you do. So I personally have never played with a mini DSP, so I'm being upfront about it. But from what I've read, you can apply more than 3 bands of EQ, which is SVS's limit. And then also one of the things, working with REW, which is mostly everybody's using now, it seems like, you can upload stuff to it versus SVS app. I run, and this is something Jonathan showed me a long time ago. I run OmniMic software from Dayton. I've had it for a long time. It's it's similar. It's calibrated mic and everything, but like it's completely different software. And I basically run frequency sweeps. And then I'm like, all right, I have a 6 dB null at 58 Hertz. Let me see if it's, positioning, or can I EQ it up? What can I do? And, if you can EQ what you want out of the SVS app, then the mini DSP is not going to add anything extra. If you get to where you're having, here's the thing, if you're having to apply 8 or 10 filters to the subs, then in my opinion, maybe they need to be moved. Maybe your seating needs to be moved a little bit. I'm not a huge mini DSP believer myself. I like systems to be somewhat simple. And I just don't think that much EQ should have to be applied. Otherwise you got an issue somewhere.
And, I use a lot of mini DSPs, but I never boost nothing. I only use it to take away. But for anybody that's using any kind of software, anything to boost multiple, you're going to run out of excursion and power so fast. It's
crazy to me. And it's almost dangerous for people to, well, I won't say dangerous. That's not the right word. It's scary for people that don't know what they're doing with it hey, I got a null at 70 Hertz and they boost it 20 dB and it doesn't change anything because they're actually sitting in a null. Well, then they just wasted all their headroom on their amplifier. And if they forget to lower that back down, they could be watching a movie one day and blow something up.
Yeah, people be like, "Oh, it don't seem very loud, but my driver's flapping in and out of the box so bad." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, because you added all that boost and you're just in a bad spot." So,
how big is your room?
14 by 16 feet.
So that's why you don't have to boost anything. You probably cut. I mean, where's your low peak? Like 20, 25 Hertz?
Well, I got a bad room mode at like 40 Hertz, about 20 dB. And then at 10 Hertz, like 9 and 10 Hertz, I got another room mode that shoots up about 12 dB.
So you cut 12 dB at 10 Hertz?
No, I leave the 10 Hertz. That's just a natural room curve. I do cut the 40 though.
Yeah. In my last house, when I had the sealed 8 DIY 18s from Stereo Integrity, people would come over and they're like, "Man, I don't understand how these sealed subs can play all these movie scenes at reference." And I'm like, well, my biggest deal, because I ran them off iNukes, which aren't crazy, powerful amplifiers. And if I remember right, I think I cut about 12 dB at like 21 or 22 Hertz, which gave me so much extra headroom that, I mean, there wasn't anything at the time that I couldn't play at reference and my subs would never clip ever.
And that's just the advantage of having multiple large subs.
Right.
Yeah.
And as I always tell people that I'm a big sealed fan, and people be like, "Oh, sealed doesn't have as much output as ported," and they don't. I like the sound of them. They almost always fit my room a little better, but you got to end up having more of them. So they fit, but you got to have more. So maybe they just take up floor space in a different area, or like you and I talked about earlier, I like stacking the shit to the ceiling.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny when when we have these big get-togethers and people hear the RTJ and they just see 4 sealed 18s, and then when they hear it, they're like, "Holy shit! I didn't think a sealed 18 would have that kind of output." And I'm
Yeah.
just, if you're dealing with good drivers and you got good power, you know, and you're set up right, you people want to talk. You just get fans of sealed and ported, but realistically, if either one is a good product and it's set up good, you're going to have a good experience.
Right.
And that's what it is.
I think something that I usually find myself liking with sealed, because I've always had, a small to medium sized room. I like the gentle roll off you get. So usually, unless you're talking, your stuff, JTR that's tuned for 10 hertz, for a standard subwoofer that's, maybe tuned to like 22, 20 hertz, the sealed in a smaller room will actually extend quite a bit lower.
Oh, yeah.
And then, people say, well, it doesn't have as much output. Well, I have 6 of them. So, 6 sealed 18s in my room plays pretty damn low.
Yeah, like if I did all the sealed in my room, I'd be able to play down probably to 4 or 5 hertz.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't be as loud, but that's just the trade-off between the
right.
two. Yeah.
And you're probably down in the basement, aren't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, what I like about my theater, it's right here in front of me. It's completely suspended floor. So my 618s, like I have butt kickers that I got a couple years ago. They're sitting in my storage area. I've never hooked them up. In the theater room, it's crazy. And
the 2-channel setups on a suspended floor. So so
you get it. Get it. There's just nothing. There's nothing like a suspended floor is money.
Yeah. You know what, Jack? I believe the receiver that Stephen was talking about probably does have pre-outs. That Denny you're talking about, Stephen?
Yeah. So the 3000 series and above, they started that. Let's see, we're on 3800 series. So they started that with the 3600 was the first one I bought in the 3000 series. Everything I had before that was always a little higher. But yeah, the 3800, it's got full pre-outs. It'll process 11 channels. It's a good receiver. Unless somebody needs, a 9.1.6, if people are doing a standard 7.2.4, that's always my first recommendation is a 3800.
I've only heard this receiver once at ABT, and it was powering some Martin Logans. Maybe he's asking this because you were talking about the lower sensitivity on the SVS. Do you believe the flagship from Denon is powerful? Do you have some hands-on with that, Stephen?
I haven't got to play with that one. I've sold a few of them. And what is he talking about?
You stole or sold?
Sold.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't steal stuff.
That's awesome.
Let's see here. So that one says it's 150, which is, I always recommend people to try to Google bench test. I don't look them up anymore because most of my stuff has power amplifiers, so I just don't care about it quite as much. But I used to always check, like, I'll never forget, I think it was like 2006, I ordered an Onkyo. It was a TX SR 805. It was like $2,000, flagship 7.2, had HDMI 1.3, but it was 130 by 7.
And it weighed like 55 pounds.
No, it weighed like 80 pounds, I think.
Oh, was it?
And it was, I remember when they bench tested it, it was like 132 or 133 by 7, all channels driven. And I had that thing for a long time. I actually sold it to a guy in the Klipsch group, and he lives in Overland or maybe Lee Summit. He's like 45 minutes from me. That receiver, he uses it every day, still works perfect.
Oh,
it's crazy how long.
I know that Denon is huge. It's got huge power supplies in it.
Yeah, the A1H is big. Like it's a not the standard height. It's taller. 15 channel. Yeah, 150 watt, 15.4.
I would, to the HD movie source, I think if you're doing a 5 or 7 channel setup, it probably definitely have enough power. But if you're doing a full 11 channel,
so here's another thing a lot of people don't take into consideration, depending on what you're crossing stuff over at. I mean, if you're running like 3 RF7, like I had a home theater for a while that had 3 RF7s behind the screen. if you had 3 of those behind the screen and I was running just a 7.2, which was really my 8 subwoofers, but just a 7 channel, and I didn't have Atmos in that room, I ran it off of a Denon 4520, which was a flagship from like 2016. And I mean, you could play that thing easily to reverence, but I had them big ass towers, you know, they're 100 dB sensitivity, and I had them crossed over at 80 Hertz. So they're not using no power.
Yeah, they're not playing no bass really,
No.
so they're not burning through the
No,
watts.
if you're not running speakers as large, if you're not running stuff large and playing in a, you know, small gymnasium, people be surprised what an AVR can power when your speakers are pretty sensitive. Like, have you ever watched, there's a video that Jonathan made a long time ago when he had his JTR, the 888s or the Noesis 228s. He was kind of mocking a video. It's an old JTR video of a guy that had a 888 and a growler, and he plays this song, and you know which one I'm talking about, where he zoomed in and then he zoomed out.
That guy was at my house.
That guy's forever away, right?
Yeah.
Jonathan did the same thing, and he set his iNuke to where it would clip at 1 watt, and he played some song stupid loud in his basement before that thing clipped at 1 watt.
That's crazy.
So sensitivity, I always tell people, like, I'd rather buy a high sensitivity speaker for home theater if you like playing stuff loud all day over, you know, something that's in the 80s, because then you just got to have the power.
Yeah.
So
this is a very popular question. I'm not on the Klipsch groups anymore because I'm not a Klipsch owner anymore, but I am part of the SVS group still. And I'm sure everybody sees this on the Klipsch side too, is comparing the Klipsch RP1600 and the PB16.
So they did that at MWAVE last year, and it pretty much blew everybody's mind when they found out that the 1600 was beating the PB16. I mean, across the board, I don't think anybody picked the SVS over it in that shootout. I think the only thing that ever really got picked over the Klipsch somewhat consistently was they had a JTR RS1, I think. I don't think it was an RS2. I think it was just a single.
Yeah,
18.
yeah, I was there. It was the sealed single 18.
And then they had, I think, the 2 GSG, the big dual 18 and the dual 21. I think those were kind of, you know, 50-50 getting picked above it. But everything else, and I'm not afraid to be shown up in a blind comparison, picking the wrong thing. You know, I would easily say if I would have picked the coat hanger over the $5,000 cables or whatever he had. So, like, I remember saying Ryan was switching back and forth, I believe, between the Klipsch and the JTR. I'm pretty sure it was the JTR. And he was asking people who thought what was what. And I was dead set. I told him, I said, I'm a sealed fan. I know sealed subs when I hear them. And I picked the Klipsch as the sealed sub, and I thought the JTR was the ported one, which blew my mind. Like,
you're like, who are you? Who am I?
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I gotta go out of the room.
Yeah,
I gotta go outside and shake it off real quick.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was really interesting. And then you know, later on in the day when people are coming out and they're shaking their heads, and it's just, I finally got to ask Youth Man and Ryan when they were breaking stuff down, like, man, the Klipsch did really, really good. And, you know, I'd already been playing with them for a while. I knew they were good sounding subwoofers. When I heard the comparison they were doing, I wasn't sure how it would fare. And it did really, really well.
So I've known Steven for a while, and for you people that don't know, and this was actually a surprise with me and Steven, we got on like a little Zoom chat here a week ago, is he was actually a beta tester for the Klipsch subwoofers, and he's got every model in his house. So he's, for what, the last year and a half you've been playing with those?
I got him like 2 years ago. I haven't been playing him with that long. I think I had each one hooked up for a week and a half, basically well before they came out. Like I had told you on our Zoom, Klipsch had contacted me, asked me if I was interested in checking them out. And I mean, I was checking out everything across the board. They sent them to me UPS because they wanted to know how the packaging would hold up. And, you know, so I gave them I gave him critiques on everything across the board. I set up my OmniMic software. I did, full room sweeps. I did compression test on them. I basically had a small issue with the tin that got sent to me, had a small woofer issue. It didn't prevent me from doing testing, but when I was playing some quieter scenes, there was a small noise. I could hear it coming from the woofer. They offered to send me a new one. I told them I didn't really think it was necessary to spend the shipping money or anything. I still got to run the crap. I basically ran the crap out of all of them, and put them all through their paces. Played a handful of movies on them. Wrote up detailed thoughts on them and sent them to the engineering guy that I was working with. Confirmed a few little sounds that I was hearing from him, and he thought I was confirming some of the things that they already knew was there, but they wanted to make sure, who was hearing it, batches that went out, some of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've had a decent amount of time. And then of course, when it came time, I said, hey, do you want me to send these back? And they said, no, you just destroy them. And I was like, well, can I keep them? And they're like, just don't sell them. Don't sell them. Yeah. So I actually just have them set up as a display. They're in the corner of my basement. I pulled my laptop over there so you could see it, but I just have them stacked from the biggest to the smallest all the way up to the ceiling, and they sit over in the corner, and they're not even plugged into anything. They're sitting by a foosball table.
So because they are fairly new, and I've only had experience with RP 1600s. My dad went from 4 SPL 150s to 4 RP 1600s. And in my mind, it was a huge step up all the way around. I definitely like the 1600s a lot more than the 150s. But when you were messing with those, what's your general thought? Is there like a sweet spot, or just go for the biggest, or were you like, man, for the size and price of this one, it really, punched higher than its pay grade? What, just right. Because they're still fairly new for the people that haven't had their hands on them yet. What are your thoughts?
So I made a little note about that, and I've told a bunch of people this over the phone, in person, over emails. The one that I always shy away from is the 1000. It's not that the 1000 is not. It's still a great sub, and if somebody's got a specific size they need to hit or a specific budget, the 1000 is still a really, really good subwoofer. The reason that I like the 1200 over the 1000 is it's really, I wish I could unplug and take you over and show you the stack. The 1200 is it's just a little bit bigger in every direction, and it's only a little bit more money, but I felt like it was like 60% more subwoofer. Like it was the biggest difference out of all of them, in my opinion. And the 10 was the only one. Some of the scenes that I was playing, I didn't try to play anything at reference between all of them. The only ones I did the reference on was the 16. And keep in mind, I just did a single of each of these that was in the same spot that I had. I had a pair of SB 16s from SVS in my bar. So I just moved to the right one, and I stuck a Klipsch in its place and turned off the left sub. So the smaller subs, I didn't test anything at reference as far as the movies go. But the 1000 had a few scenes that it just couldn't hang SPL wise with everything else, at least as clean. Like I could audibly hear, I always call it fart noises. I could hear it farting a little bit on some of the, I ran it through like the grenade scene on World War Z. I don't know what that one plays down to, but that scene will test a subwoofer. That one, Tron, is another one I like. And then I had told you the Olympus Has Fallen, when the monument is crumbling, that gets down to some single digit stuff. The 10 was not having it. Everything else seemed to not have any issues with it. So sweet spot, I would say the 1400 is probably the sweet spot. I tell everybody that I've sold mostly the 1600s, whether it's been when they were on sale recently at a big discount or when they're not on sale. The 1600s they're a good buy. And I just tell people, I'm like, hey, the 1600s aren't a whole lot more. They're not a whole lot bigger. And, you get the what if thing. And I always mention that to people, because there are lots of people out there that, you know, and I've done it before. I don't do it so much anymore. I research stuff so much that I usually end up making the right decision. But, you know, I bought, like, my first Harley I bought 10 years ago. I bought a Sportster, and the guy tried to talk me into spending more money. And I just didn't want to. I bought a Sportster. 8 months later, I was in trading it for a huge loss to get a touring bike anyways. It's what I should have got in the first place. And, you know, there's people that'll buy a subwoofer and they have it for 2 days and they're like, what if I would have bought the next model up? And it's like, hey man, I warned you. Now you got to pay, you know, send the thing back and all the back and forth stuff. And it's can result in damaged shipping. And it's, you know, it's not cheap to ship all that stuff. Like the SVS trade up policy. A lot of people think that's super simple, cut and dry. Oh, I paid $1,000. I get $1,000 back. And then I just pay the difference. It's not. You have to pay the return shipping for the old one, then you pay the difference, and then you pay the shipping for the new one to you. You know, so if you're going from a 2000 to a PB16 Ultra, you could be paying some money.
Yeah,
those don't ship. Those don't ship on UPS. They ship on pallet. They're expensive.
I know that this is, and you probably got a bunch of emails on this. How do you feel about? Obviously, you know, Klipsch went through that run where they had some bad amps in the SPL 150s. What kind of response have you guys been getting back from customers for like warranty claims or emails or just in general in the industry? How do you feel about the new Klipsch amplifiers?
So I think, and I got into it with the guy on one of the Facebook groups the other, not that I got into it. I commented to him and he disliked my post and that was about the end of it really. But I think I've started reading about a few issues. I think I've read maybe 5 or 6 people. Since we've been selling them, I've had 1 amplifier on a 1600 and 1 driver on a 1600. Otherwise, everybody else that I've dealt with, that I've sold stuff to, hasn't had any issues. I have read recently about a few people having, well, I say a few. There was the one on the Klipsch lovers group, I think on Facebook, that he had an issue with the driver, contacted Klipsch, new driver on the way in the same day, right? And then I've read a couple people hearing like a ticking sound, but they didn't say enough to know whether it was a woofer or an amp issue. I can tell you from as long as we've been selling like the R115 and the SPL 150s, those had a lot of amp issues. They did. And I tell people all the time, like, you know, SVS has amp issues. I've had amp issues with almost every subwoofer brand I've ever owned. They just happen. There's no product out there that's perfect and that doesn't have, you know, everybody has a little quality control issue here and there. When stuff's made overseas or it's made hundreds of thousands at a time, you're just going to have an issue here and there. And the reason I think Klipsch gets such a bad rap, they sell a lot more. You know, they're at a price point that's lower, and you know they might sell 10 to 1 versus an SVS sub. So if you get 2 bad amps out of that batch, you got 2 people complaining online, and it gets out of control really quickly. And basically, that guy that I told, you know, he was, you know, Klipsch is just junk shit, blah blah, and it's like, man. For one, it scares people away, right? They have a 5-year warranty just like everybody else does now. And the new subs are nice sounding, man. They're a good value. They just are. And I hate when people make it sound like, you know, they're complete junk. They're not. They're not at all. They're good subwoofers. And I don't know if that guy was just mimicking crap he's read and he had an SPL 150 and hasn't even heard any of the new ones. I don't know. That would be my guess. That's most of the time what it is. Because once somebody gets one and they hear it, and yeah, if a year in it has an issue and they got a new amp, that's the people that you're reading. Hey, I contacted them. They sent me a new one. I love this thing. And that's the same thing, you know, for SVS. The guys that have good warranty, it just makes it easier. I've only ever had a few customers that they're not comfortable changing out a woofer or not comfortable changing out an amplifier. And, you know, I always tell them, I'm like, hey, if you want to pay to ship your subwoofer to me, I'll change your driver out for you. But I'd much rather save your back some pain. I don't mind. I have FaceTimed with customers before to walk them through stuff. And most of the time it's a guy that, you know, maybe an IT guy that's not real comfortable using a screwdriver or something. And they're worried about poking a hole in the driver, or they're worried about tearing something up and it not being under warranty anymore. And that's never the case. It's just not. Yeah. If SVS is sending out a new woofer, they're obviously understanding that they're sending a complete stranger that they don't know any kind of skills that the guy has or girl has to change a woofer. And they're just hoping that, hey, we troubleshot over the phone. You for sure need a woofer. We're sending it to you. Let us know if you need any help.
Yeah. And this is a conversation obviously based around SVS and Klipsch, but and I don't have anything against Monoprice. It was strange that when I seen them selling their dual 15s and guys were having an issue that you literally had to pack up a dual 15 and ship it back. I'm like, dude, that's a 200-pound sub. If I had to carry that out of my basement, I'm shipping it back for you to keep, not for you to send back to me.
And you go read online about their customer service. Yeah. Everybody says they are impossible to deal with. And I'm the same way. I'm not shipping you a 200-pound sub and waiting for the other one to come back. You can keep it.
Yeah,
I'm done. And there's plenty of people out there that are like that they don't want you messing with it and they want you to ship it back. Nope. I'm not taking a day off of work to sit around and wait for a truck to get here. I'm not doing that crap. That's silly.
You know, all right, everybody. I know we passed the hour mark, and I try to keep these around an hour. I do want to touch on one more question. Oh, it's funny. Cat just had to step out for a second. Should I listen to Nude with Money in Hand? Huh? I don't think that's what are you asking here?
Jack wants to know how to get his wife into the hobby.
Well, how I did it, I just started bringing Kat around to different home theater events, and then I listen to a lot of music that she gets into, and then she could give me her impressions, and now she's just one of the guys when it comes to the group. I mean, I got lucky that she's just pretty laid back with most everything going on. So
I kind of
know what she was getting into.
I kind of realized a long time ago, like when I first got married, my wife thought I was crazy, all this speaker shit all over the house. And then she went home on vacation for a couple of weeks and she came back and like she got in the car and was just like, a good stereo. And we got home and we watched a movie and she's like, not a sound bar. And I was like, you like it, don't you? That was it. She would never spend the kind of money that I spend on it. You know, if we got divorced, she ain't gonna have none of this stuff. She sure as hell wouldn't sit and listen to TV speakers ever again. She just wouldn't.
Yeah.
So Jack, make sure you got some good gear, man. Your wife she'll get used to it. Then
he said he has a Klipsch. He's got one of the new Klipsch 1200s.
Yeah, send her to a friend's house that's got a sound bar for a weekend. Then when she gets home, she'll know who's daddy.
Spliff says that he had a really good time. Thanks for hanging out. Hey man, we appreciate it, Spliffy man. And Friday night, just hanging out with everybody. So the last question I want to ask you, Stephen, and I see this get asked often too, is and I currently with my JTR setup, I use Klipsch in ceiling for Atmos. But what are some? Because I honestly I don't know the answer. And obviously with Atmos getting just more and more popular, and pretty much everybody their in game is an Atmos setup. What is a good or a popular option, regardless if they're going with SVS or with Klipsch? What's a good option from both brands for Atmos options?
Well, I mean, you're pretty limited with SVS. You got the elevations. I mean, unless you're going to get some kind of fancy mount and put a bookshelf up on the ceiling to point it down. And with Klipsch, they have same kind of modules, whether they're high up on the wall as a height or reflecting or just hanging up, pointing down. Obviously with Klipsch, you can move to the in ceiling stuff. You know, I basically have a newer version of what you have in your theater in my theater, as well as my living room. And then we've got some guys that are a little more hardcore that I always say they're probably not married, that have a little bigger speakers. And Klipsch actually makes, they make a pro cinema surround. They're called KPT 8000s. And they also make an 8060H. One's a high power version. The other one is just an 8000M. I think they have different woofers, and one has a slightly less powerful tweeter, and they have different horns. One is a 90 by 60 and one's an actual 90 by 90. We've got some guys that have like 8, 9, 10-foot ceilings that I've sold the 8,000 M's to. I know when Klipsch came out with their new like big, the huge behind the screen system back at Cedia in 2019, they actually had a full Atmos setup and they used the 8,000 M's. What's cool about the 8,000 M's, they're kind of hard to mount because they're cinema surrounds, but they're surprisingly slim. Like I think they're kind of a funky shaped cabinet, but I think the bottom is maybe only like 3 inches deep, and then the top is maybe like 4.5 or 5. So they're relatively thin speakers, and if you could, French cleat them somehow up to the ceiling, they're not really that big, and they're cinema surrounds, so they are, they're like what you're looking at for the JTR. They're just a bigger pro SPL oriented speaker. They're what I ran in my old house. I had gone away from all pro cinema stuff in between while I was building some DIY stuff, and I bought the RF7 Trio up front, and I bought some on-wall RP surrounds, and I quickly realized with as loud as I listened, the RP surrounds couldn't keep up. So I bought the 8,000 M's, and I was blown away at how much better they sounded. And I've actually sold quite a few of those to customers that have RF7 based home theaters. Because like I said, they're not real obtrusive. They are a black square box hanging on the wall, and they're like an ABS molded plastic cabinet. And they have a metal grill. They're a utilitarian looking speaker, but they're really nice. They're good speakers. So that from Klipsch is, it's an Atmos option for the hardcore guys that don't mind having something hanging from the ceiling.
Crazy on cost, or actually not?
They're not. The retail is kind of high on the cinema stuff, but they're not that bad. They're not near as bad as people. The cinema stuff is all pretty much like we don't list the retail, otherwise it just scares people away. Yeah. Same with the THX Ultra. A lot of that stuff has the installer stuff always has a little more margin built in, so they have higher retail prices, and sometimes they're just not worth listening. If you're given a discount, I just encourage people, if they're even interested in the KPT surrounds, just shoot me an email, or anybody can get a hold of me on Facebook Messenger. Like I'm pretty much, I always have my phone with me. I'm a sales guy. I always keep it with me. It's always around. So if anybody wants any info on that stuff, I've actually got a couple YouTube videos on unboxing those, and maybe even an install video on one of them as well.
What's your channel, Steven?
Scrappy Doo.
Okay.
It's just under that. I don't have, it's not 100% home theater related. I got stuff on my kids on there. My son made a YouTube video when he was like 5 about a demo in an RC car. Like there's some silly stuff on there. It's just, I used to use it when I was in the military for a way for family to see videos, before we had FaceTime and all that stuff. I'd upload a video to there, and then I'd just tell people, hey, go to YouTube and watch this. And that was kind of what I used it for.
All right, cool. Well, we have taken up an hour and 15 minutes of your guys' time. We certainly appreciate you hanging out with us on a Friday night. Steven, man, I can't thank you enough, man, for, it was cool about Steven when I reached out to him. I said, hey, man, the community just wants to kind of hang out and talk about this stuff. And he was, I didn't have to twist his arm too much. He's definitely, he's into the hobby for sure, and just in about it for the community. So it was cool. We all just kind of get along and have a good time with us. So, Steven,
I don't know, since I'm watching in this other room we got, I don't know how many people are actually watching this. I'm curious on if a lot of these people watching are coming to MWAVE.
Yeah, because I can see how many we've been averaging, pretty much between like 10 to 20 the whole hour and 15 minutes. So, if you guys are, who's ever coming to MWAVE, jump in the chat. I believe some of these guys are coming to MWAVE. And some of these guys are actually coming to my house in May too.
Yeah, it's always fun to meet new people. That's one of my favorite things about this hobby is obviously if you're traveling to something like MWAVE, you're flying halfway across the country, you're pretty into the hobby. So you're going to be hanging out with a bunch of like-minded people. And obviously I invited you and William over to my house one night while you guys are here. And obviously if your wife's here, she can come too. And I don't know if she'll want to hang out with my wife or she'd rather listen to speakers. It sounds like she'd probably rather listen to speakers. So, but
well, she might want to hang out with your wife if we've been listening to speakers all day anyway, you know? So.
Right. Yeah. It's always a good time. And, you know, I'm about 30 minutes from Kansas City, and I pretty much offered last year, anybody that felt like driving to my house was more than welcome to come for an evening hangout. You know, I got a full bar here and lots of bourbon to drink and a beer fridge, and man, I can chat speakers all night with people.
Spliffy says, I'm trying to get out there. Can't quite squeeze a VIP, but the experience room should still be crazy. Yeah, man, Spliffy, the whole experience. I mean, you're going to see stuff out there. You're going to see $200,000 projectors. You're going to see, you know, JTR steps. You're going to see JVC lasers. You'll see the Martin Logan Neil lists probably out there again. You'll see. Pretty cool.
That was the fun room, and that really wasn't home theater. It was 2-channel, but
yeah,
those Neil lists were still cool.
Yeah, so you'll see. Hopefully SVS comes out again, so you'll see. I mean, not entry level, but still more modestly priced, all the way up to, you know, crazy price stuff. There's a little bit of everything for everybody out there.
Yeah, and I'd be more than happy, Splippy, if you come, you know, Friday, Saturday night or something. If you got a rental car, I'm not sure where you're from, but I'd be more than happy to have you over. Who's bringing a bike? Yeti guy's bringing a bike.
Oh, he's coming. Oh, Yeti's coming to my.
Hey, summertime. We can plan a ride. I'm down.
So yeah, we'll see Yeti at our house in May, and then he's trying to make it out for MWAVE in June. That is what's up.
As long as it's a road bike. If you're bringing a mountain bike, I ain't doing no mountain biking. That's not my cup of tea.
We get all the comments, Kat? Yeah, we had quite a few comments. All right, cool. All right, Steven, I'm just going to throw you in the waiting room quick. I'll say bye to everybody, and then I'll chat with you for a minute.
All right, sounds good, buddy. See you guys.
All right, man. Peace. All right, guys, that was a lot of information, and I'm glad that everybody could hang out with us. Certainly appreciate, you know, you guys take an hour and 20 minutes out of your Friday night to hang out with us and be part of this community. I swear you guys are the best community ever. We appreciate all the emails and chats that we get from you guys. Liking and subscribing certainly just helps the channel out with the algorithm shit. Next Friday night, Spliffy from Florida, absolutely down for that. Let me know. Best place to reach out. Oh, you can, Spliffy, you can, I'm sure you could just reach out to Stephen, like on Facebook or through that email that I shared earlier. So next Friday night, I'm not doing a full episode, but we are going live at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Kat is getting Kat back in the hot seat. If you guys catch the first video where I hit her with some extreme output, she had stipulations to where none of the other speakers could be on, only the subwoofers, and I wasn't allowed to play a song that went too low in hertz. But we definitely, you know, gave her a lot of impact. So this time we're going to run the front 2 speakers. I'm going to play a song that brings us down a little bit more in hertz, around 20 hertz. We'll see how she handles that. And then there'll be another video probably a month after that where we'll run all the speakers, and then we'll take it all the way down to 10 hertz, and that's her throw up zone. So, yeah, we got a next Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll probably only come on for about 5 or 10 minutes, Kat and I. You'll get to see her beautiful face, and we will get to hang out and chat, and going to go live and put her through the punches on the setup. Going to be filming tomorrow night. I don't know when I'll be sharing those videos. Like I said, I got some fresh meat coming through, people that have not experienced the setup yet, and going to hit them too and try to get some reaction videos and their thoughts on it. Just trying to have a good time with everybody. So once again, share his email. Oh yeah. I got to share Steven's email again for the people that were asking. Just hit Steven up there, steven@paducahometheater.com. If you have any questions about any of the products he sells or prices, or maybe you had a question that we didn't answer exactly how you wanted and you still have a question, he'll be certain to reach back out to you. So either way, peace out. Have a good weekend. We will see you next Friday night, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. And Coley Gray, thank you for the intros and the outros. I did not mess up your name, brother. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody. We'll see you guys later.